Mason West.
Welcome in to this episode of Bare Bones to IR. I'm back again. I am Dr. Mason West, joined by co-host awesomeness Khari Thompson. Khari, how you doing?
You know, I'm doing all right. Hope you don't mind. Brought my my uncle nearest to come hang out with us today.
Yeah, I mean that's great because I actually brought my Casa Humilde Cafe coffee porter. One of my patients got me from Bitter Pops. Hey, Bitter Pops, shout out, come sponsor your boy. Their advent calendar of beers. So this is the 12th beer in a row that I've had. Casa Humilde, by the way, right around the corner for me in Forest Park. Go check it out. Really good tacos, really awesome guacamole, and really solid beer.
You know what? I mean, so we're doing the advent calendars over here as well. For me, it's socks, which honestly, I don't need more socks, and yet it's nice to have the socks. So like, especially right now, so in the morning, right, I'll wake up and be like, oh, man, I gotta go fish around for some socks in the drawer. And I'm like, nope, advent calendar socks. I'm good. I'm straight. And so I just go ahead and slip the slippers on, head upstairs, and we are good. Love it.
That's awesome. I absolutely advent calendar is one of those things where no matter what it is, beer in my case, socks in yours, little chocolates in other people's, et cetera, it's just a good time. So absolutely love that idea. What I don't love necessarily is how this bear season is going, but we're going to try to put a little positive spin on it the best we can, if there is one.
I mean, I think there's nothing positive about obviously the record and the failure of expectations, but I think we can say, you know, if you want to be positive, I think we know the quarterback's good, and that I think this is the worst he's going to be.
Did you get an opportunity? He posted it kind of late just because he actually wasn't going to do it, and then I think enough of us prodded him that he did. JT O'Sullivan's QB school on Caleb for this week.
I did not see it.
Yeah, I'll dive into that. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think Caleb can be a dude, and we've seen way more from him than we've seen of almost any Bears quarterback in recent history, besides maybe Jay Cutler, but he wasn't originally a Bear, Denver Broncos, all that jazz. That being said, there's some stuff where I don't know if it's just Calebiness or if it's problems with the current iteration of the Bears, whether you want to say coaching, what the weapons are doing, what the offensive line is doing, all that stuff. But there's just some weird stuff Caleb does at times that I expected to be cleaner, knowing who he was as a prospect.
I think that's interesting because, and again, this is without me having looked through it. I've watched some of JT's stuff on Caleb before, and he's praised some of the, you know, the little instinctual things that Caleb does. I feel like, and this is something that I think we talked about before the season, you know, leading up to the draft. And then I think it's been kind of lost in translation as we've gone along, and we really accepted, like, yeah, this is going to be the guy. He's going to be the Chicago Bears quarterback. Let's get excited. And you know, we love it. We love what he's doing. To me, I felt like there were definitely things last year, especially, that, yeah, he was trying to be Superman because the defense couldn't stop anybody and he kind of had to be. But it was never going to be this like, oh yeah, he's going to come in and look completely polished. He's not that guy. He, at least not right now, right? He is an ultra playmaker who can put on the Superman cape. And sometimes he tries to do it too much. And sometimes he does it at the expense of doing the easy things. Though, again, I think, as you kind of mentioned, he does more consistently and is more capable of doing the easy things, I think, than a bunch of the quarterbacks that we've seen come through here. So it's like you have higher expectations for him. But for me, it was always like, not unlike what I've seen here in Boston, in New England with Drake May. It's like, are they more ready to play than I think people were giving them credit for? Yeah. Is it going to look like a 10-year vet right off the bat? No. But that's okay. So I'll check out what JT has to say. I mean, I think that he's generally, like, he's tough but fair.
Yeah, I would agree.
Uh, so I mean, look, I think that when you watch it, you're like, yeah, I can see that. And I think there are also things where, for a guy like JT, who as a backup quarterback, it's like you have to do the little things right, or you're not going to be in the league. I feel like I prefer his criticisms of the little details to some of the older veterans, like a Kurt Warner, who again, Kurt Warner knows so much about football, so much about the quarterback position. But I feel like where I struggle with guys like Kurt is it's almost like if you're not playing the way that I played, it's not going to work.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
I
I would
don't
even
think that's
extend
it.
that a little bit to JT, where sometimes, and first of all, you should absolutely for not be subscribed to him on his Patreon. It's well worth it. Doesn't just do obviously Caleb, but does all the quarterbacks. So it's nice to be able to compare what we're seeing across some of these guys. But even with JT, sometimes it's overly like, go get to the check down here. But then when he does get to the check down, it was, well, you should have hit this other guy on that on the second read. And it's quarterbacking is never perfect. So, and he says this himself, it's easy
Yeah,
when you have the clicker to do that.
yeah.
But just to give a little synopsis from what it looked like, it was mainly a criticism of the entirety of what that offense looks like,
I mean, yeah,
and then the little bit of why is Caleb so antsy in the pocket, or why is his footwork not as clean as it would
exactly,
be, and then
exactly.
that goes to like coaching and yada yada yada
and
yada,
that
which
and
we did.
that's not surprising to me at all. And
Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing that um with rookie quarterbacks, especially rookies that are used to being a little bit more out of the pocket creators, because that's what Caleb is best at right now, is being an out of the pocket creator. And he's awesome at it. We have seen some incredible stuff from him in there. We've also seen some really good stuff in the pocket. But I think that especially like some of the turnover and chaos with the offense, right? It's like it was looking a lot better there for a minute, Thomas Brown being the offensive coordinator. Now all of a sudden Thomas Brown is calling plays from the field and the operation is different. Like nothing has been stable uh for him. And I think that reflects sometimes in his play. And you see the talent still. You see his ability to make those elite quarterback level plays. But I feel like it's one of those scenarios where the instability around Caleb seeps into his play, which is something you have to monitor and something you have to evaluate along with like, hey man, look, there are certain things you can control. You got to do a better job of controlling this part.
couple quotes to get to here. Thomas Brown says that Wednesdays will be walkthroughs the rest of the season. The Bears are about to play 3 games in 11 days, starting with the Monday night game. We also saw last week that some of the injury report was handled a little differently than we might normally see. DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift were both non-participants for a good chunk of the week until Friday when they were limited. So it looks like whether it's because of how this particular season is going, or maybe just going forward, that Brown really feels like there are, maybe you don't have to necessarily practice every day at this point in the season, depending on what you're dealing with.
That feels like such a savvy move, I think. And also a bit of understanding because I mean he played, right? And that at this point in the season, everybody's beat up. And it's also a scenario where I think you've got to, I think, settle in. And it's a weird thing to say when you're this far into the season, but this operation is new to everyone right now, with Thomas Brown being the interim head coach. Like, yeah, he's been there in the room, but it's just been such a chaotic season. And I think that there's a level of like, okay, look, if we're going to walk through, we're going to meet a lot, we're going to install today, we're going to do the mental part. And then I need you to come in and execute really well on Thursday and Friday instead of like, we're just going to bang our heads against the wall for 3 days and be, feel surprised when it doesn't work. I and again, maybe this isn't going to work. And if they get, beat again this weekend, people are going to be like, yeah, well, maybe you need that extra day of practice, right?
Yeah,
Everybody's going to have a criticism of it if it doesn't work. But I mean, I think it's a tacit acknowledgement of the fact that, look, like we got a lot of stuff to figure out. And, starting with me and how I operate this thing, throw that onto the fact that we're 14 games into the season, or whatever, 13 games into the season. It's, doing the best you can with a rough situation.
And playing devil's advocate, I don't necessarily agree with this, but playing devil's advocate, it'd be easy to point to, hey, remember when Matt Nagy said didn't want to play any of his starters in the preseason, and then like how that year went, like clearly you could have used that. And then you come out, fast forward to now, we have Thomas Brown. They came out non-energetic, flat as hell in that 49ers game. And I mean, it's not like the entire team was held out. Obviously, last week was specifically DeAndre Swift. It was DJ Moore. And obviously going forward, Wednesdays will be those walkthroughs where it's everybody. We'll see what happens with the Vikings game. There's an asterisk on last week with the shift where you wanted the dead cat bounce, but you also had Thomas Brown. That was his first week in his second move up the chain in a very short period of time, and whatever that was, 15 days, 17 days. So there's just so much going on with that it's not even necessarily a real actual assessment of kind of where the team is at and where Thomas Brown is at necessarily, but we just got to see what's going on going forward at this point. Like when we get a couple more data points and there's some consistency to how they want to run it for the next couple weeks.
Yeah. And I think in so many ways, right, there are no perfectly right answers to how to close out the season as an interim head coach when your season's essentially over. There's no playoffs at the end of this rainbow for the Chicago Bears. And I think that in a way it's like, okay, how do I best keep this whole operation together? I think the thing that's going to be telling is obviously the last time the Bears played the Vikings, they way overperformed my expectations on offense. And I think that if it looks chaotic and disjointed the way that it did last week, then I think you start to say to yourself, like, okay, this really ain't it. And whether it's you need more practice time or players have checked out or whatever it is, like this is bad.
Thomas Brown was asked about Caleb Williams' interception-less streak, and he said, he's not playing scared. He's ripping some footballs into tight windows. I think it's probably even more impressive. It's not like he's sitting back there not taking an opportunity. Now, I will say I don't think I agree with this, and I have reasons as to why that I'll get into later in the show, but just a general conversation about it. I mean, you can look at, there was that one throw where he tried to fit it by one of the linebackers of the 49ers, went through his hands, should have been an interception on his way to trying to hit Keenan Allen. But then at the same time, there's plenty of times where you're seeing plays where he just doesn't throw the ball and he takes a sack that we really think he shouldn't. I don't know that I agree that he's not playing scared. I don't even know if scared is the right word. Tentative, hesitant, restrictive. I don't know, but I don't know that he's ripping the ball consistently.
And again, I think I would be curious to watch the film in depth on that. But I mean, I think he was playing freer in those games where Thomas Brown was, the offensive coordinator doing it from the booth, and you had that kind of like that spark for those couple of games. But I think that there are definitely examples throughout this season, especially during the early parts of that losing streak, where it's extremely obvious that Caleb Williams doesn't trust the protection, doesn't trust the concepts, the spacing, and drifting or holding the ball into sacks. And you're like, this is exactly the kind of stuff that I think people were worried about when they're looking at his time to throw, and noting the fact that, hey, time to throw doesn't usually improve when you get from college to the NFL. I think technically for him, it has this year.
It has.
I would have to look at the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's improved from his last year in college. But I think a lot of this is just seeing it all for the first time. And even if you've seen it for the first time already, it's like you're still seeing it all as a rookie. And you're learning how you deal with those situations the first time, second time, third time. And it's just about accumulating reps. And the kind of guy that, again, the Caleb Williams is, I think there is that natural, okay, he's best on the move outside of the pocket. He can make all of these insane throws. And then it's going to be kind of like it was with Patrick Mahomes earlier in his career. You're going to learn, okay, let me just take that right now. It's going to take time.
Yeah, going to take time. That's probably the biggest thing. All right, and then the last quote I have before we get into our head coach segment is Caleb Williams had what some would call a strong endorsement of Bears GM Ryan Poles. Now, I didn't hear this live, so I don't know exactly the question and the phrasing of that question that led to this answer, but Caleb said, the amount he cares about us, the Chicago Bears, and wanting to win is why my faith is in him. I've been on the record that I am in the Poles has done enough to deserve continuing his job at this point in time. And I don't necessarily think that some of the things that are held against him are as negative as people make it to be. There are ones. The Chase Claypool trade is one of them. You know, you got swindled into a just mentally weak player. It is what it is. But that, you know, and you then people bring up the Eberflus and Shane Waldron aspects, whereas I go as to I don't necessarily know how much and what he did in those. Like, did he pound the table for Shane Waldron? Was that his pick, or was it a hey Matt, who do you want thing? I don't know. And I have some thoughts on the offensive line, but that's a whole thing. But when it comes to what Caleb says about it, to me, I don't think Caleb could have given a very, just neutral to positive answer and just moved on. I thought that what he said, that, wanting to win is why my faith is in him. I mean, that's to me a pretty strong statement towards what he feels that Poles is currently at.
I think, especially in hard times like this, you need, I think, some of that reinforcement. And it goes beyond like, okay, the pieces that he put around. What does he know about, drafting and, free agent signings and all that? He's just out there trying to play ball. And I think that in his mind, he's like, look, man, I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to do the best I can. I think the team's good enough. The guys around me are good enough. I can make this work. And I feel like it should be working better. But in terms of Ryan Poles, look, I don't think you can dispute whether or not the guy cares. And I think that on paper, the things that he did, especially to rebuild this squad from what it was at the end of the Ryan Pace era.
Trash is what it was, by the way.
I mean, catastrophic amounts of dead money, old, bad, all of it. I think, like, again, on paper, he's done a tremendous job, including, securing the trade that got you Caleb Williams. I do think that while that's great, whether it's Ryan Poles' fault or whether it's the Chicago Bears organization as a whole, perhaps not empowering Ryan Poles enough to make all these decisions, who knows? But the results still haven't been good enough. Like this year, it was supposed to be decent, right? And again, I think a bunch of us thought they were going to be in the playoff mix here. None of us thought they were going to win a Super Bowl this year. Right. That was going to be like, okay, 2 or 3 years, you get Caleb Williams.
I don't think you're looking at the right part of Bears Twitter if you didn't think no one thought that.
You're right. Sorry, I'm only looking at the sensible part of Bears
there
Twitter.
You go.
My bad. But I think that while we didn't expect that, the results needed to be better than what it was. And I don't think it was necessarily about roster building, though the offensive line, not great. But the coaching staff, look, in the end, that you're in charge of that. You're in charge of that. And whether that's fair or not fair, because again, don't know if he was told he couldn't fire Matt Eberflus after last year, or if the ownership was just like, look, we really want to go ahead and run it back, and if it doesn't work out, we'll fire the guy. Which again, we're never going to do. It's like the idea that they actually did it during the season. It means it must have been pretty catastrophically bad for it to get to that point. But I think my main point is I just feel like, great, the process has been fine for Ryan Poles by and large. But the fact that the results haven't been there is also in part due to decisions Ryan Poles has made.
Sure. And the two last things I want to bring up with this before we move on. when you go back to who was interviewing the same time as Poles, first of all, remember that people didn't even think the Bears would get Poles. He was a very sought after GM. It was a whole
Absolutely,
thing.
yeah.
During that time period, one of the people that did interview was Ed Dodds. And he just surprisingly pulled out of the race at one point. He's definitely a guy who wants to be in a GM position. He currently is the assistant general manager with the Colts. He's been that since 2018. Highly regarded individual. Just because for some reason everyone loves Ballard, even though I don't think Ballard's that great. But anyway, he ended up pulling out. And I do now wonder, is part of it because he got into that interview with that committee of individuals in McCaskey, and they outlined this is what we're thinking. And maybe they even said, hey, by the way, this is the early who we're leaning towards for head coach. And he said, get the fuck out of here. Like, because he comes off to me as a guy, the little I know about him, but, you know, the Colts do a pretty good job of letting their people speak. He's like, no, if I'm the GM, I'm the GM. And then you fast forward and you see Ryan Poles is handed 3 head coach candidates. You fast forward and they hire Kevin Warren and change the power structure. And so Poles is no longer directly reporting to George McCaskey. So that to me is a problem in terms of the setup for Poles. The one other thing I do want to bring up in terms of the offensive line, I get it. Nate Davis was a disaster here. If you go back though to his time at the Tennessee Titans, and I'm using PFF grades because there's not a lot of stuff to measure.
For a reason.
He had a 69.7, 24th amongst guards in 2020. In 2021, he had a 68.9. In 2022, he had a 70.6, 19th amongst guards. That drops to a 52.9, 94th when he got to the Bears, and then a 100, a 53.6 his second year with the Bears. You want to go one step further, let's look at Lucas Patrick. Lucas Patrick in 2023 with the Bears had a 50.5. He left the Bears, went to the Saints, who are falling apart right now, by the way. But now he's at a 69.6 PFF grade, so substantially better. So again, and I say that, and I know there's someone in the chat, there's someone who's going to listen to this podcast on the way in, and they're going to say, "Well, Chris Morgan, you kept him Poles." Like, and it's like, I don't know that he did, because like you said, yes, he's in charge of creating the staff, but at the same time, I always was led to believe, and depends on the place you're in, that you hire your head coach, and then your head coach, with of course blessing from a higher above, ends up making those hires and decisions. So do you want a GM that's going to say, just overrule and say, no, Matt Eberflus, you can't have Chris Morgan. No, Matt Eberflus, you can't draft Jaquan Brisker. No, you can't do this. You can't do this. I just think that there needs to be more now that Matt Eberflus is gone, I just don't like the finger pointing and making it seem like signing of Nate Davis and Lucas Patrick and some of these things were just the worst things in the world. Because at the time, they actually weren't. And some of these players, like Lucas Patrick, have left and done better. So, like, is it really a Ryan Poles issue? Not really.
It's a Chicago Bears issue.
Yes.
Clearly, they come here and it drains their talent like the Monstars. And then they leave, and it's like, oh, wait, you're a useful NFL player again? How the hell did that happen? It's like, always was Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears. All right, we do need to hit into this head coach shenanigans. Danny is not here, as you know from the last 24 minutes. He is dealing with daddy stuff and, thoughts and with what's going on with him. Nothing we're going to talk about here, but his list did not change. He still has Ben Johnson first, Brian Flores second, Liam Cohen third, Mike Vrabel fourth, and Drew Petzing fifth. Gross. I don't like Drew Petzing. Khari, want to give us just like a couple sentence thought process on why some people ended up on your list, like Aaron Glenn, for example, because no one else has Aaron Glenn.
Yeah. So Ben Johnson, we all think Ben Johnson's good. Mike Vrabel, who's also on your list. I know there are a lot of people who are just like, no, only offensive coaches or like only offensive-minded coaches that are going to get the most out of Caleb Williams. I also think, though, that Mike Vrabel is just a good football coach. He's a good football coach. He wasn't let go from the Titans because he was a bad football coach. And so I think that there's just some value in having a guy who's just a good football coach your team. He brings the attitude that I think would fit really well with the Chicago Bears. Now, again, it would all depend on how he was going to develop Caleb Williams, who you bringing in to be the offensive coordinator, to do that job, right? I think that if you felt good about that, he would immediately become a fan favorite with the way that he gets the team to play football. Because I think that what you would have is you would have a team that is like almost Dan Campbell-esque, right? And again, nobody wants to hear about running the football, but basically anybody will tell you that being able to run the football and stop the run is the first sign of knowing if a team is soft or not.
Stop it, the
And
Rosen mentality.
your team would not be soft with Mike Vrabel. They're not going to get pushed around. He would not accept that at all. Aaron Glenn, look, I think we talk about the Dan Campbell effect and wanting that leader of men and stuff like that. And obviously the preferred choice there is Ben Johnson, because he's on the offensive side of the football. But look at Aaron Glenn and what he's had that defense doing on that side of the ball with all the injuries they've had, starting with Aiden Hutchinson, like one of the like 5 best edge rushers in the league. The dude hasn't been out there, and they, again, have still been playing really good football. And I think, that along with the just being part of this developing winning culture and helping grow that thing from the ground up is very attractive. Liam Cohen and Joe Brady, gotta be honest, I'm not overly enthused by either one of them, which is why they're 4 and 5 on this list. But I think, for Liam Cohen, he was, he's been in, the Sean McVay system. He was the Rams offensive coordinator in, I believe it was 2022. That wasn't a great offensive year for the Rams, but that was because Matthew Stafford's arm was falling apart that year. And they had like Baker Mayfield coming in 2 days before the game. They were trying to make it work with like John Wolford and like Bryce, Perkins and stuff. So it was a mess at quarterback that year. But again, been in the Sean McVay system, and has like been a part of seeing how Sean McVay, who's also just a very good coach generally, how he operates. He was also part of developing Will Levis at Kentucky. And again, Will Levis, you can have opinions on him as a quarterback, but I think, playing better these days than he was certainly at the start of the season. And again, knows a thing or two about working with a young quarterback, especially one who, has a cannon for an arm and sometimes likes to take risks. Joe Brady is a guy that, again, he was huge at LSU that year. They have a record-setting offense with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, et cetera, where they were just like blowing the roof off of everybody. And then hit some struggles with Carolina and has seen a career rebound with the Buffalo Bills. And some of that is like, okay, Josh Allen, right? But Josh Allen was not performing as well with Ken Dorsey, who was his kind of handpicked guy. They got rid of Ken Dorsey, got back on the Joe Brady train, and he had them cooking. So I think that that's at least somebody that I would be intrigued by, whether it's a lateral move or, for offensive coordinator, or if you thought he was a good enough head coaching candidate, and your top options didn't work out for you.
So I'll keep mine fairly straightforward, where yes, there's unknowns with Ben Johnson, but it's the potential home run, but also potential flop thing. You don't know how he's going to command.
And that's a great point about Vrabel, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Basically, as John Deltalia said, also Vrabel didn't look like he got much out of Levis from Malik. Can Vrabel put a staff together to develop a QB without LaFleur? Excellent point. And that's what I was going to get to when it comes to my number 2 now, which is Brian Flores, as well as my number 3, Mike Vrabel. You're seeing take the Lions. You are going to see probably both of their coordinators leave. And can Dan Campbell still do what he's doing without Ben Johnson? I believe at this point, the thought process would be they might elevate. I can't remember his name. It's one of the guys who are in the building, and I know a lot of the NFL is pretty high on him. It'll pop in my brain at some point, probably. And when you lose Aaron Glenn, can the Lions still be the Lions? Now, you're worried if you're the Bears, if you go with a Flores or a Vrabel, unless you have a good offensive coordinator and that person leaves, can you replace them? But I think if you were to ask the Lions, would you replace the last couple of years? Would you redo the Vrabel hire, knowing, like, let's say next year your team crashes down a bit because you don't have an OCDC? I don't know that you do. I mean, because of what you had the last couple of years. So for me, and why I have Flores over Vrabel, I just have it there because the issue that Flores had, I think, is a very learnable one in terms of how to operate and balance out what you're doing with your quarterback. I mean, he had a hard time getting offensive coordinators, but because he was too antsy, he would fire them very quickly was a part of it. And I think Flores's circle is a bit bigger now because if he went to Pittsburgh, right now he's with the Vikings, that he has, I think, a higher chance of being able to pull in an OC. Vrabel's circle is pretty tight. It's what, Texans, and then when he was with the Titans, and now I guess he's dabbling a little bit with the Browns, helping them out. And then for me, like you said, I'm not really excited after 3 at this point. Joe Brady, I think I have him over Cohen just because of how he's been able to operate, like really, really improving this offense. Like it went from okay to like, oh damn, kind of a thing. Versus with Cohen, it's fine. It's hard to measure with that because they've missed Mike Evans for a while. Obviously, they lost who they lost for the entire year. Goodwin for the entire year, all that. So there's limitations there, of course. But so for me, it's really those top 3. And if it's not Ben Johnson, Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel, I'm not as excited. I think the Flores Vrabels can command the room. Oh, and the point that was brought up earlier too. I mean, as soon as Vrabel lost LaFleur and Arthur Smith in particular, when they lost
Arthur
those
Smith
two,
was the low-key wizard of that operation.
Fell apart. So that's where I have it at this point in time. A question I have for you before we move on. You'll notice that none of the 3 of us have anyone that's currently employed as a head coach anywhere else because it's in bad taste and you're not going to be assuming anything happens in the NFL at this point. There, especially the ones like the Shanahans. Why would he ever leave? You have the McVays. Why the heck would he leave if he just retire? The one that could happen, and I'm curious on your point of view on this, would be Kevin Stefanski. The reason I think it could happen is because something has to change in that Browns organization. And so far, they have shown that they're not willing to stomach moving on from Deshaun Watson because of money and contract issues. You have a Mike Vrabel, who is a top candidate for this year, currently on your staff. He's from Ohio. He doesn't necessarily want to leave. People in Ohio love other Ohio people. It's just a thing. And if you're going to potentially have someone to take the reins of this team, wouldn't a Vrabel make sense in terms of a course shift and handling the Watson situation and all that jazz? So my question to you is, if a Kevin Stefanski became available via trade, is that someone you would be interested in? If so, where would he fall on your list? And if so, what would you give up for him?
I think I would slot him in behind Ben Johnson.
Okay, so number 2 for you.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of compensation, I don't think you're going to have to give up a first round pick for him. I'm sure they might try to get you to do it, but
they're going to want to make up some of that value they lost in the Watson trade, essentially.
I'm sure they're going to. But if somebody asked me for a first round pick for Kevin Stefanski, I'm keeping it pushing. And that's not even necessarily to disrespect him, but I think that, again, like if you're talking about like a like a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan, that's probably worth a first round pick. Sean Payton, or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what his compensation was offhand. What was second rounders?
I'm going to pull it up right now. You keep talking.
But I think, that's not one of those that you're looking to give away a day 1 pick for. So I'd be willing to entertain it. But then again, if you're not willing to give up a day 1 pick for a coach, are you doing it?
That's a good point. So the Saints got a first round pick, a future second, and the Saints sent back a third in order. And that's the thing too. Sean Payton wasn't an active coach. He was semi-retired too, so that factors in. I would be in the same. I agree with you. I know a lot of people. If it's a McVay, if it was a Shanahan, which again, I'm only saying that because other people are. It's insane. It's not happening. If those are the people, you are then giving up more. It's a Stefanski who's done solid stuff with the Browns, but it hasn't been anything like mind-blowing. It's just like, isn't there a potential that you have a Stefanski you don't have to give up capital for in a Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I think that by all accounts, even if you're talking like, okay, Shanahan, I could, see that being worth it. But honestly, like there's just something about it that I think on principle I just don't love. I'm like, get your own,
Yes.
right? Everybody want to talk
I
about
agree.
trading for coaches or whatever. Identify your own, right? Those guys don't grow on trees. And, as we've seen with, just about any good player, like they're not getting traded most likely.
And we do have to mention that Bill Belichick signed a 5-year deal to the head coach of North Carolina. First 3 years are fully guaranteed. Financially, there would be a $1 million standing in the way of him being potentially leaving after one season. Belichick said that he didn't go to Carolina just to leave, but you never know with that. The reason I bring it up is because there was a whole thing that's flowing around, right, where Bill and his horde of minions were sitting around all year and watching film and stuff, and basically thought that the Bears job would be the best job, and that they wouldn't be an option, as in Bill Belichick and his minions wouldn't be an option, because the Bears are likely going to go highly touted offensive side, and that lines up with our number one pick, Ben Johnson. So all the Bears fans who are currently doom and glooming and saying that it'll never happen,
I think I guess I'm curious about what that means when they say that it was the most attractive job. I mean, I'm sure some of it is like, hey, Caleb Williams, really good player, and look at the pieces they have. From a roster standpoint, they would, probably be one of the better teams that you would look at that, has a head coach opening. From that
part of it
standpoint.
too is you look at some of the teams also available. They just also some of them are terrible. The
Yeah.
Jets are where coaches go to absolutely die.
Yeah, and
they have no answer
Belichick
at
would
quarterback.
never go there anyway because he hates the Jets with every
Right.
fiber of his
You look at the
being.
Saints and their cap is a wreck. You
Yeah.
look at who else? Some of the other potential ones. I mean, the Cowboys are like probably that one is probably the second most attractive. The Jaguars, I would say, is probably the third most attractive. But you look at some of the other options, and part of it is also because they're just bad. But with the Bears, I mean, you have pieces. You really do. Like it's not like they're terrible. You have a quarterback that you're hoping is going to be the dude. I mean, the early returns are good, and the cap situation is good, and the picks are solid. So like, I'm not surprised that they would potentially see that.
Yeah, I also think there's an element of Belichick that is just he's all about nostalgia and history, and I think there's that bit about the Bears being one of the charter franchises, in league history, and yeah, he knows their history and all that, but this idea that he could go there potentially and turn them around and be part of that. And I think he respects the franchise, like the name of the franchise, the history of the franchise a lot. Whether or not he actually would have come here, I just don't know that I wholly buy it.
I don't either. I mean, especially he spent the entire freaking year bashing Caleb Williams. Like, I don't think he sees Caleb Williams the way that a Ben Johnson would see Caleb Williams. All right. We're finally done with the intro to the show, essentially.
Because he really just wants his quarterbacks to throw the ball exactly where he tells them to throw it. And if they don't, he gets mad. Anyway.
Training room roundup. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. A, because we're running long, and B, because there's really not a lot to talk about. When today was essentially a walkthrough. So a lot of this is just unknown. And same thing as last week, where these are probably going to change by the time we get to later in the week. So there's not really a ton that we're going to have to go through this, but the people who didn't participate: Ryan Bates, Josh Blackwell, Javon Dexter, Roschon Johnson, DeAndre Swift. I wouldn't expect Roschon Johnson to play again. Neither. I would agree also with Ryan Bates, Javon, and Josh Blackwell and DeAndre Swift. I would lean towards them playing. Travis Homer, interestingly enough, was a full participant in theory, a full participant after he suffered a head injury. They're not labeling it concussion. They're just saying head injury. And then Elijah Hicks was limited, but probably going to be back. That's pretty much all we have.
Yeah. Only one I really care about, not going to lie, is Dexter.
Yeah. Other than that, meh. For the Vikings, Stephon Gilmore did not participate. So he may be sitting again. He missed last week. Aaron Jones limited, Andrew Van Ginkel, Patrick Jones, and Josh Oliver. The only people that really matter there are Van Ginkel and Aaron Jones, but I would expect both of them to play.
Yeah, I think the only one that, and again, Stephon Gilmore, very good player, but again, I'm tired of seeing Aaron Jones. No more Aaron Jones, please.
I mean, he's on a fantasy team that I'm in the playoffs with, so I'm okay with him just running shop this week if that happens.
Okay.
All right, we got a break here, and then we're going to get into the next part of our show.
Ooh. Okay.
Crisp.
Whoa.
That's really good.
That one's really good too.
That was good.
That's like,
It's so refreshing. Like it's so good to have right before we go play.
And it has,
like
like,
it
the-
really quenches your thirst.
and it has the right amount of bitterness where it kind of
Yeah, it's like not too sweet, not too bitter. That's
yes.
what we were saying with the last one.
I like that. Mango
This one,
turmeric.
this one,
one is my favorite.
this one's the best. This one's
No,
the best.
that one. Guys, we're gonna have to
no,
argue
no, I
over
like
this.
this
It's
one.
that one.
No,
That
this
one.
one's so good. This one's
I
so
actually-
good.
That was the professional rugby team for your Chicagoland area, the Lions. Kombucha is a premium performance-based kombucha crafted specifically for athletes and active individuals. This revitalizing beverage blends the traditional benefits of kombucha with nutritional enhancements to support energy, hydration, and recovery. Made from organic teas and infused with natural electrolytes, kombucha offers a delicious and effective solution to maintain peak performance. Better athletic performance, increased nutrient absorption, improved wellness, and improved cognitive stamina. Go ahead and use the code BEARGUTCHECK, BEARGUTCHECK, to get 15% off your order. All right, knee-jerk reaction. What do you got?
I think we see regression from the Chicago Bears offense.
You can regress
from
more.
the last,
Oh, from the last time they played the Vikings. I
Yeah,
thought
from the last time
week,
they
I'm like,
played the
how do you?
Vikings.
They had 4 yards in the first half. How do you?
Yeah,
regress more?
I mean, yeah. If it regresses past that, I think at that point we've got some major problems. No, but I think that you're not going to see 340 yards again from Caleb Williams. I think he's going to turn the ball over in this game. This could well be the one where he throws his first interception in what is it, 7 games.
Yeah, I can see that happening. It's odd. It almost felt like during those first set of division games, it was like we're playing in defiance of what's going on.
Exactly.
And now there's not defiance there because there's nothing to
now
defy
now
against.
we're at resignation.
Yeah, the big bad man's gone and we're just gonna chill. It almost feels like my knee-jerk reaction. The player leaders, and I'm using air quotes for those listening to the podcast, and cogs in this team have a lot to prove in the next 4 weeks. Because you were brought in, right, again, to be leaders on this team, and some of them, 8 of you who are captains, that's way too many captains, by the way, just are clearly not stepping up. And sometimes football is a sport where you need also the vocal ones. You can't just have the lead by example guys. And no offense, I love Cole Kmet, but missing the blocks he's missing is unacceptable as a captain. When guys on the back ends, right, Jalen Johnson, he's still a very, very, very good player, but you need to truly step up if you're going to also the week before be a big reason why your head coach gets fired because you just call him the hell out. Then you need to play your butt off.
You dominate.
And that goes for pretty much everyone. So you need to be better, significantly better. And it's interesting. There's one guy, by the way, who legitimately wanted to be a captain, and that was Jaquan Brisker, and he didn't become a captain, but he's probably one of the few that I could actively see step up and get in someone's face and be like, you need to be better. I mean, then he'll do his little bow and arrow, flappy thing, and then people will get pissed about it. And I love Jaquan. To be perfectly honest, something brutally honest, what do you got?
I think that loss last week ended any discussion about Thomas Brown being the coach of the Chicago Bears in anything other than an interim capacity. I think, and again, that's not even to say that, I'm not going to judge him overly harshly for it because this is a season and a team kind of in free fall, but to have that dud be the first thing that everybody sees, first impressions are important. You'll notice that nobody else is talking about Thomas Brown potentially being the guy now.
As y'all probably saw, from last week to this week, I removed him from my top 5 list. He went from number 2 to no longer on the list. So I agree with you to an extent. I am curious if they went 4-0 and it was just and they beat the Packers by 2 touchdowns and Caleb Williams out duels Jordan Love and looks like a better quarterback. Would that shift you at all?
It wouldn't shift me for him being the quarterback of the Chicago Bears.
No, I don't want to play quarterback.
Not the quarterback, but rather the head coach of the Chicago Bears. It wouldn't shift me from that standpoint, but it would make me more optimistic for his overall future. I'm thinking about his future outside the Chicago Bears at this point.
let me ask you one more question before I go to be perfectly honest. If you hire Vrabel or Flores, that type of coach, and he says that, and then we're also pretending that Bears end on with some good notes on offense, and he says, you know what? I would love Thomas Brown. I want you to continue being offensive coordinator. Thomas Brown goes out, doesn't get hired as a head coach. Would you be okay with him sticking around in that offensive coordinator thought process?
I think so. I think so.
Cool. All right, Mike, to be perfectly honest, this connects to something that you brought up earlier. Caleb Williams from week 6 to 14 has an active streak of 255 consecutive pass attempts without an interception. There's been some interceptable balls, I will say that. This is the longest such streak by a rookie in NFL history. I like it, but I only semi-care. I need Caleb to play with a bit more nasty. We have seen it at times. I think it was the last Vikings game where he rips a pass to Rome. The 2 defenders are right there. It's a very tight pass. There was one in the Lions game, just like a beautiful drop over a linebacker. Like, it happens. There are some tight throws. But his aggressive throw percent is 12.2%. That is 10th lowest according to Next Gen Stats. So that kind of goes against what Thomas Brown is saying. This works for guys like Lamar, Mahomes, and Tua. They rank 1st, 2nd, and 7th lowest in terms of aggressive throw percent because of their weapons or who they are as quarterbacks. But Caleb isn't Lamar or Mahomes yet, and his wide receivers aren't getting a ton of separation. For example, DJ's at 3.3 yards, Keenan's at 2.7, Rome's at 3.1 yards of separation. It's not awful, but it's middle of the road. So if you're going to move the ball downfield consistently, you're going to have to throw into some tighter windows.
Yeah. And I mean, again, the hope is that you have an offense that's a little bit more like, Ben Johnson's, right? Where you get the easy button a lot more often. There are actually graphs that show this. No one gets the easy button more than Jared Goff does. And right now there's no easy button for the Chicago Bears offense. Some of that might be personnel, but I also think some of it is simply, the design and the personnel usage.
I do just want to highlight, by the way, it is really funny that Ben Johnson was underneath guys like Adam Gase, and Bears fans are just not about like Adam Gase. It's just even his Ben Johnson's offense is more like New Orleans Saints in nature, which is just not the in vogue thing, right? So not the McVay thing. It's just funny. All right. Well, ain't this humorous? I'll do this one first. Sam Darnold has thrown for 3,299 yards, 68.4 completion percentage with 6.2% over expected, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a passer rating of 108.1. This is the same seeing Ghosts, Jets Darnold, the Panthers Darnold, who had 16 touchdowns and 16 interceptions combined across 2 years. Basically, it's just funny. Coaching matters. Kevin O'Connell is a special dude in terms of what he was able to get out of late Kirk and what he's helping Darnold do. How did the Vikings find Kevin O'Connell? They dug deep. He was the OC for the Rams, but he didn't call plays. Having a cup of coffee with Sean McVay can elevate many, but the shadow of McVay can also hide some talent. Kevin O'Connell was imperative for the Rams Super Bowl run as he was the main translator of concepts from Stafford to McVay. We're speaking basically 2 different football languages, and vice versa. So why is Darnold balling out? Because Kevin O'Connell and even Josh McCown, to an extent, are able to pull some really good football out of them. And that is something that we have not seen from a head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, whatever combo you want to talk about in Chicago.
Yeah, I think this is where it comes down to, as we talked about, get your own. It's possible. Okay, just know what you're looking at, which is part of the problem. I don't think the Chicago Bears know what they are looking at. Mine is Caleb Williams basically going to everybody and saying, like, man, I've never been through a stretch of losing like this before. It's like, I don't really know how this feels. It's like, who said that recently? Basically every Chicago Bears quarterback that has come through here. There's like, man, I am just not used to, like, how do y'all live with this? And it's just like, yeah, we just do, because that's what the Chicago Bears do. They lose. So this is going great.
Going fantastic. Question in the chat, John D. Should Vikings re-sign Darnold? If you were the Vikings GM, are you bringing Darnold back for the, whatever inflation you want on the Baker Mayfield contract? Would he even get the Baker Mayfield contract, or would it be more at this point? Or are you rolling with JJ?
Couldn't tell you. I mean, I think that my gut says if you really like JJ McCarthy, then you roll with him and you do the whole you do the Alex Smith to Sam Darnold, and you're like, yeah, man, you did great. We're happy for you. You played well, but I just don't think we're going to win a title with you. So you got to go. The complicating issue with this situation is that JJ's not just red shirting so he doesn't have to play. He's hurt. He can't play.
Right.
So you don't know anything about, I mean, you got a little sample size of him in preseason, but you don't know what he's like, in terms of like larger sample size, even in practice, aside from training camp. So that would be a pretty big dice roll. I honestly feel like if Darnold doesn't get something better elsewhere, you re-sign him to a 2-year deal or something like that, something that you can get out of in a year if you want to. Trade him in the off season, on an expiring contract, something like that.
I like that answer. All right. We got another ad. Underdog is a place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I have used multiple sites and apps to enhance my game day, and Underdog is quite unique. Something pretty cool is their vulture protection. If you select a designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry and they get vultured, they will rescue your entry. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. With Underdog's double flex option, you can even take 2 L's and still have your entry be a win. This season, Underdog's going to be running a special, promo, or bonus almost every single day, like profit boosts, discounts, free picks. Basically a sure thing. A player just has to get higher than, let's say, 0.5 passing yards for that selection to win. Plus, all new users get a free pick. Download the app today and use code CITY, CITY, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every hair-raising touchdown just selects higher or lower on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 3342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. What you need to know about this matchup against the Minnesota Vikings.
Can you help these stranded Vikings get back home before they're trapped forever? Lost Vikings.
Assist and played that game. You know what we're talking about. That was a fantastic game. The Vikings have won 6 consecutive games, including a 42-21 victory over Atlanta last week, in which quarterback Sam Darnold became the first Minnesota quarterback since Dante Culpepper in Week 6, 2004, with 5 touchdown passes in a game. There's also other Darnold stats I'm not going to read because we're running behind. Questions for you. Are the Vikings a true Super Bowl contender? What is preventing them from being a favorite?
No. I think their defense is very good. I just don't feel like, aside from Justin Jefferson, that they are a truly threatening team. And I'm not scared of Sam Darnold at all if I'm a playoff team going against the Vikings.
I would be curious. I mean, to look exactly at what the Vikings record is against teams above 500, or potentially what their record is against current playoff teams. I think it would still be pretty good considering they have not very many losses.
Yeah, I just think that it's different. I think when you come to playing against playoff teams that it really comes down to, I just don't trust Sam Darnold like that. I just don't. Okay, I think that when he comes up against, you especially got to play, outdoors against like the Philadelphia Eagles or something, going to be hunting his ass.
So if it came down, let's say for some reason the Lions and the Vikings were playing in the NFC Championship game, are you taking Jared Goff or Sam Darnold?
I'm actually going to take Jared Goff. I think, I actually feel pretty easy about that one. Yeah, I'm taking Jared Goff.
All right.
I just think he's better.
Not fair. If you could inject truth serum into Ryan Poles, what would he say about the state of the Bears as of 12/12/24?
I think he would say that it was not supposed to go like this.
Not like
Um,
this.
I think that he would say, like, you know what, look, I still think it's going to be fine next year. I just need to get a real coach, somebody who's going to get the best out of my quarterback. I need to get some offensive linemen. But I'm a little worried because we were not supposed to be like 4-9. That was not supposed to happen.
I already kind of asked this question. We're going to skip it. Do fans understand the roles and responsibilities of an NFL head coach?
No, what? No.
And I asked that more specifically with the, Thomas Brown situation and, fans just being like, oh, like it's over. This is terrible. Like he clearly can't coach and not even just with him, but just in general, where you talk about, I don't even think these coaches know if they're ready to be a head coach. Right, because they're in the meetings and they see what their head coach is doing. Like, let's say they're a coordinator of offensive defense, and then you sit in the chair and it's like, oh my god, geez.
No. Again, we don't know any of these guys, right? Whether or not they can coach until they actually start doing it. We don't know if Ben Johnson can be a head coach. Yeah. We're assuming that he can and that he should absolutely be the best because he's the best offensive coordinator. We've seen really good offensive coordinators become head coaches and suck, right? So you can't assume any of this. And, then there are also people who are like, and I think the odds are better of this being right, but it's like we see guys it's like, okay, well, this team is, 3-10. This coach sucks. Fire him now. There are definitely some coaches you can say that about. Absolutely. But I think that there are some coaches where it's like, okay, they're normal bad, like normal in it, kind of like a rookie quarterback. It's like they're normal bad, where it's just like, okay, they're inexperienced, but you don't suck, right? And this isn't catastrophically just, inoperably bad. Like, for example, like somebody like Gerard Mayo in New England. Has he been great? No, he really hasn't. He's made plenty of he's made plenty of blunders in terms of, the operations, in-game decisions and stuff like that. But he also put together a plan that helped develop Drake May into becoming pretty good. And so, like, you got to also take into account the good things that happen and really look at the bad and say, okay, how much of this would be better if the Patriots had a better roster, right? And look, there are also a number of coaches that you can point to. Dan Campbell, they were 0-13 that first year with the Detroit Lions. They started off 0-13 and won their last 3 games, right? And then now he's one of the best coaches in the NFL, right? Bill Belichick started off 6-10 in his first year as a head coach with Cleveland and went 5-10 his first year with the Patriots. And I'm sure there are people who be like, this guy sucks, get him out of here. I'm not saying that like every first year coach, if they have a bad year, oh, well, the greatest head coach of all time also had a bad year. They're totally going to be that guy. Odds are usually that's not what's going to happen. But the assumptions that based off of just wins and losses or just like, oh, like this team is, commits too many penalties or, this team is undisciplined in this way. This team is this, and this guy can't coach. Yeah. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Campbell because, I mean, like you said, his first year, he was 3-13-1, 9-8 the next year. So, I mean, improvement, but not like blowing you away. Brian Flores, I think, is a great example because people look at it poorly, but he was 5-11 his first year. That was also when, in theory, he was being asked to purposely lose and offered $100,000 per loss to do so. And he was rocking, Devontae Parker, Alan Hearns, Kenyon Drake, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was his quarterback. I mean, like, it wasn't a good team, and he still got 5 wins. And then the next year went 10-6. So, like, it's not as simple as we make it out to be.
No.
All right, I got one more question. I had 2 more questions, but Danny not being here really ruined my second to last one. But what are you gonna do? Last one, I had 2. Okay. Do the Bears have anyone you feel is worthy of the Pro Bowl?
Jalen, I guess. Off name reputation.
And is that a feature? If you had to put that in a bucket, more
I
so,
think
just
Kevin
percentage
Byard, I
wise,
think, has been decent too.
he's been solid. If you had to put that into a bucket reason in terms of why it's
I
a
would get
at best
okay. My guy, also my guy Kyler Gordon. I gotta say, he's not getting in, but Kyler Gordon is my guy.
Is it a coaching issue, a GM roster construction issue, or a player execution issue? You only get to pick one as your majority bucket.
Coaching,
Okay.
because I think this roster on paper is good enough.
Sure. All right, next. Love it, hate it, rehabilitate it. This is a matchup or dynamic that we love, one that we hate, and one that we'd fix if we were the Bears. I love the chance for Rome to continue progression to be Bears wide receiver 1, coming off a 4-reception, 2-touchdown game. In week 14, he ranked 7th in percent of teams' air yards with 50.41% and catch percent of 80. You add the Vikings DBs are okay. The defense is more of a sum of its parts, and Flores doing wizard stuff. Gilmore missed last week, might miss this week with a hamstring strain. And we looked at that. Byron Murphy had 63 snaps, Shaq Griffin 57, Fabian Moreau 39. Griffin is a 68th ranked corner according to PFF, and Moreau has a grade of 59.1. Just all fine overall, just not great. Fine to not great. I will say though, Murphy continues to ball out. He's got a 74.8 PFF grade, 13th ranked DB overall. Does he follow Keenan or DJ? Do you scheme away from him if you're Thomas Brown? So all that being said, I think Rome could have a good game.
Agreed. And kind of to that point, I feel like while we both think that Caleb Williams needs to take some more risks,
Please.
I do like the fact that he has not turned the ball over nearly as much as I think that perhaps we expected. For a guy who had a lot of fumbling issues in college, I mean, he hasn't thrown any interceptions, and he's lost 2 fumbles in this 7-game streak. So it's not like, oh, he's not throwing interceptions. Like, I mean, Justin Fields, I think, had a couple of those where it's like, yeah, he wasn't really throwing interceptions, but he's fumbling the ball all the time. It's like, you're not really getting that with Caleb Williams. So I think ultimately, like, there is this part where you want to see him, take some more risks. But ultimately, when you're not turning the ball over, generally that means you're not hurting your team in a more catastrophic way. So I do love that. Now, I did say that I think the Vikings will test that this week and potentially get a pick off of them. But I think that just generally, I like the dynamic of how he is playing. Because, look, do we want more exciting stuff? Do we want to see more big boy NFL throws? Yeah. But part of learning how to win in the NFL really is learning how to not screw it up. And it's hard to get rookie quarterbacks to figure that out.
Keep going. What do you hate?
I mean, I hate that now Brian Flores has had a second opportunity to figure out how this offense operates, but also the fact that Thomas Brown has to do all this other stuff and can't dedicate all of his attention to staying a step ahead or staying on the level with Brian Flores. I don't like this matchup better right now. And then, of course, you look at the head coaching matchup. Like, I hate that because, I mean, Thomas Brown has been the interim head coach for 1 game that didn't go well. And Kevin O'Connell, I think, is objectively a good NFL head coach. So, yeah, not great from a coaching standpoint.
I'll keep mine simple. It's the run defense. Again, they allow the 7th most yards this year, 5th most yards per carry. Shanahan is great, and the O-line is coached so well with the 49ers, but you still allowed 131 yards on total, 78 to Isaac Arendo on only 15 attempts for 5.2 yards per carry. And then even when he went out, Patrick Taylor had 7 carries at 3.6 yards per carry clip. It's awful. It's really, really bad. I mean, yes, you're hoping that next year Jaquan's back in there. You're hoping that Billings is back and healthy. But I'd go as far as saying, I think, depending on the defense you're going to be deploying next year, I might be signing one of those Puna Ford type that might be actually might be a starter somewhere. But like you're saying, hey, no, we need you to be a nice rotational piece here. Yeah, that's just me.
Yeah, I think. And again, some of it's a mentality thing. And I think some of it, you could see it kind of coming a little bit with the run defense, obviously not being as good once you lost Billings. But I also just think, on paper, you should have a better run defense than what you have. And unfortunately, you're also going up against Aaron. Please, Aaron Jones, just take it easy this week, because if he plays, he's getting 120.
Which would be, again, selfishly fantastic. All right. What is your rehabilitate?
My rehabilitate, I feel like as it is so often, is why is Cole Kmet not getting the football?
It's an excellent question. I don't understand it. And to me, it's like when you watch it, it's heavily a scheme issue where he's the third, fourth read. Like every once in a while, I just like him to be schemed up more quickly.
Give him, one of those, slides, right? Where like the sneak flat routes. Just give him one, right? Let him run after the catch. Something easy, right?
Still,
and I feel like I'm amazed at how little they do that for him.
And even after with a couple drops in the last couple weeks, I mean, he still is in the top 5 in catch percent. So like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And again, I think that, we've talked about it before a bunch of times on this show, but I think it was particularly glaring last week when you couldn't get anything going and you have this tight end that you try to tell us is a top 10 tight end in the NFL, and you're not finding ways to get him the football. I don't get it.
My rehabilitate, and this pains me, Torrey Taylor is tied for second most punts in the league. That's what happens when your offense can't move the ball consistently. He's also third worst in return yards allowed, 12th worst for average return yards allowed, and only 14th in fair catches. So that shows his third place ranking is partially due to the number of attempts, which is a lot, but he still tends to outkick his coverage at times. Part of this falls on the coverage team, be better, but he has to know the limitations of the coverage team. It isn't like he's booming every kick either. He ranks 13th in average kick and 19th in net yardage. Heck, I mean, his long is 68, which is good for 13th best. So I'm asking for more precision to allow coverage unit to get down and to reduce returns overall. All right, next. X Factor for the Vikings. What do you got?
Well, said his name however many millions of times here. If Aaron Jones plays, the Bears are, word that I'm not going to say on air. They're in trouble because he always dominates the Bears, and the Bears have one of the, leakiest run defenses in the league. And if the Vikings are allowed to run the football on you, then you've got no shot. Simple as that.
Mine, Andrew Van Ginkel. Not necessarily a household name for some, but he's a guy who I believe played with the Dolphins last year, pretty important third team, and he's the perfect piece for Brian Flores, where he just does a little bit of everything. I mean, even in the Bears game, he tipped the ball, and he's everywhere. He pass rushes, he can drop into coverage and plays that very well. He's a guy that is going to really impact what you can do at the middle of the field, but also, like I said, pressure you if they send him on a blitz. So Andrew Van Ginkel.
Indeed.
My X Factor for the Bears is Hart. And this is where I'd put the replacements, like, tapping the heart as he goes into halftime in the final game if I had thought to do it ahead of time. Do you still care for the rest of this season? Or are you already checked out and, have your tickets booked to California, Florida, Canada if you're Chase Claypool? But you asked for Eberflus to be fired so that you could have someone else, in theory, Thomas Brown, as all these assistant coaches, all these players talked about. They've talked him up. Are you willing to play for him? Are you willing to play for yourself? Because at the end of the day, some of these players are not going to be here, right? They're going to be playing somewhere else because either they get cut or their contracts are up. So do you care enough about your job to play out these last 4 weeks and actually put some good tape out there too? So can you play for your teammates and your coach, and can you play for yourself? It's got to be hard.
Yeah. I think the X factor for the Bears is whomever is lined up across from Jordan Addison, because I think we know Jalen Johnson is going to spend his time largely across from Justin Jefferson, most likely. Jordan Addison been going off though. on the other side of things. So, Tyreek Stevenson probably going to see a bunch of targets coming your way. Be prepared for that. Jordan Addison easily could have been my X factor for the Vikings. He just went off for like a 3 touchdown game, in that 5 touchdown, marathon that the Vikings just put out. And he's part of what makes this offense really go, because it's great to have an elite number 1 receiver, one of the best receivers in the game. But then when you have a number 2 receiver across from them, and when you're talking about Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, or Jamar Chase and a T Higgins, you can't do anything at a certain point. You can't do anything to stop it.
Yeah. All right. Over unders. We're going to power through these in our next section and then get the heck out of here. Caleb Williams, interceptions, 0.5. There was that pick.
Over.
Sam Darnold, passing yards, 250.
We go over.
Over. Cole Kmet, receptions, 3.5.
Man, you know what? I'm gonna go over. I'm against my better judgment. I'm going over. I'm gonna overcorrect.
He had 7 last time they played the Vikings, so maybe.
Gonna overcorrect. Yeah, there you go.
Aaron Jones, that bad man, rushing yards, 105.5.
Okay, come on now. We can't. That's too high.
He had 105 last time they played. DJ Moore, receiving yards, 100.5.
Nah, I'm gonna go under on that.
Under.
Rome.
Harrison Smith, dirty plays, over under 0.5.
I mean, you got to set that higher.
It really should be like 4.5.
Got to be like 2.5.
Bears sacks, 2.5.
Yeah, under.
And then lastly, first half points for the Bears, 10.
I'm going to be optimistic. Let's say over.
Over. Bear gut check. We use our gut feelings, revitalized by kombucha, of course, to give our game predictions. Make sure you use code Bear Gut Check to get your kombucha. It's awesome. Seriously, try it. You won't regret it. Bears at Vikings for Monday Night Football. Kickoff before the Falcons at Raiders game. Minnesota favored by 7.
I think the Vikings will win, but the Bears will cover.
Okay. Cowboys at Panthers. Carolina favored by 2.5. Who'd have thunk it?
I don't know about that. Yeah, I could. You know what? Honestly, I think I'll take Carolina for both. Bryce Young's playing some decent football.
He got some swagger back.
I mean, I'm generally against benching young quarterbacks, but I feel like this is actually a case in which benching a guy worked. He's
you can say the same about Anthony Richardson too. I mean, he played better after being benched.
It's so interesting because he's still bad
Yes.
in a bunch of aspects, right? But I agree with you. I think Anthony Richardson has been better since being benched. Certainly the results have been better.
And then Bills at Lions. Lions favored by 2.5.
Oh, it's so good. I think I'll take the Lions. I think I will.
Lastly, Packers at Seahawks. Green Bay favored by 3.
Yeah. I'm taking the Packers.
Yeah. All right. Coccyx and Bull story. Bold prediction. Go.
Bold prediction. We are going to get. Let's see. Oh yeah, you know what? You said bold. Another multi-touchdown game from Rome.
Okay.
4 touchdowns in 2 games. Let's get it.
My bold prediction: Bears win. I know you've had a bunch of points, and they all make sense as to why the Vikings could and should run away with this game. I didn't say
they were going to run away. I said they were going to.
Oh no, you said you said that the Bears would cover, but they wouldn't win. Why they would lose, I should say.
Yeah.
Division games are different. An extra couple days to really settle in after that loss. I'm calling a delayed dead cat bounce. You just need a little extra time to feel yourself here.
The first week was like, hey man, it's kind of crazy, but now we got our feet wet.
Yeah. So and I just think too, like we've seen them play this team close. We've seen them play the Lions and the Packers close. We know it's in there, and we know that there's a lot of narrative going around. And if there's going to be a week that they say, what, screw the narrative, it would be this week. If they can't, now all of a sudden, you can't pick them the rest of the season to do anything. But and also 7 points is just too much. I just can't do that. All right, that's it. That's what we got. Khari, anything before we get out of here?
You know what? Just try not to embarrass yourselves, y'all. That's all I need. That's all I ask.
Keep saying it. The rest of this year is just about making sure Caleb doesn't break physically, mentally, and you know what? I've said this a couple shows now. This game and the Seahawks game are very important in terms of the NFL narrative. A lot of eyes on Caleb because we all know that pushes things, and that'll affect, in my opinion, the head coach search. What head coaches might want to come here, and then especially that Lions game. What does Caleb look like in front of maybe potential hopeful Bears future head coach? So there's still stuff to play for, especially if you're a fan. So I have this game circled as you need to ball out so that the narrative continues to shift, hopefully positively for Caleb. All right, that's all we got. Bear the hell down, everybody.